friends, I am so glad you are here today. Today's video is a fun collab with my friends Wendy over at Plan Prep Pray and Katie from Life in the Mundane. We are all sharing some homeschool curriculum that, if we could do it all over again, we probably wouldn't actually buy another time. Now, let me say this up front, okay? This is not like a bashing session, right? We all homeschool differently, and something that completely flopped in my house might be exactly what your family is looking for. This is really just a peek behind the curtain at what didn't work for us, and hopefully it'll help you feel more confident about choosing what works for you. So, let's get into it. Now, first up for me is My Story K from Masterbooks. Now, I love that Masterbooks has a heart for keeping things gentle, especially in those earlier years. But for us, My Story K just didn't land the way that I had hoped. In all fairness, we did try it when my daughter was probably a little too old for it, but even then I was hoping it might add something kind of light and meaningful to our homeschool day, and unfortunately it just didn't. The lessons often felt really disconnected, like we were jumping from one idea to the next, without any kind of strong thread really pulling it all back together. There were some cute elements like the word collector cards, for example. The concept is great in theory, kind of like vocabulary cards. But in practice, it felt like just one more thing to keep track of. At first, I thought, okay, these could be kind of fun. But after a few weeks, I realized we really weren't using them in any way that was meaningful, and they weren't helping learning stick, and they didn't really connect. Then there were the quest collector cards, and honestly, I never really even figured those out. I think they were supposed to add kind of like some interactive discovery element to the lesson, but they just really didn't make sense to us, and we gave up trying to make them work pretty early on. Looking back, I can see that there are some really great pieces to this curriculum. The idea behind it is solid, and for a brand new kindergartner with a parent who kind of enjoys piecing those things together a bit, it might actually work really well. But for me, at that time, I didn't feel confident enough to make the major adjustments that I think it would have taken to make it work. And to be completely honest, I'm not sure that I really would have wanted to do that anyways. It just didn't serve our homeschool in a meaningful way. Next up is Where Faith Grows Level 1, also from Masterbooks. Now, this one is similar to My Story K in that gentle approach. It's designed to build foundational biblical truths in a really soft kind of conversational way. And I do think there's a lot of value in that, especially for those younger ages or for families who are just starting to bring kind of the more faith-based conversations in their homeschool. But again, we were probably a little late to the party. My daughter was already a little bit too old for it when we started, and even though we did try and stick this one out a little bit longer than My Story K, it really just wasn't the right fit for us. One thing I didn't love was the way that the lessons were structured around these fictional conversations between two characters. The idea is sweet, but reading through those back and forth every time started to feel like a lot. I found myself wishing we could just kind of get to the teaching without all of this extra dialogue. Also, it had a little bit more of like a classroom or a group setting vibe to it. And I can see how this might work beautifully for a mom of multiples, or maybe even like a small co-op. But as a homeschool mom of one, it really just kind of read awkward in our homeschool. There were parts of the lessons that we really couldn't do or didn't make sense really for us. The pacing was also a little odd. So each lesson is designed to stretch over 2 weeks, 3 days per week. which doesn't sound bad at first, but it's written like very specifically to that rhythm. So if you want to like adjust the schedule or anything, you kind of had to piece it together, and then the reading was off, and it just added a lot more mental work than I wanted for something that really already wasn't clicking for us. At the end of the day, it just didn't introduce anything new or meaningful in our homeschool. It wasn't bad, but it really wasn't doing anything either. And with a resource like this, I really wanted it to feel alive and relevant. So after a few weeks of trying and it just not working, we ended up setting it to the side. Next on my list is All About Spelling Level 2. Now, I do have a full review video coming out soon that will go into more depth. So if you're using this program or you are considering it, be sure to check back for that. But here is a little bit of kind of a quick summary. We actually moved through level 1 and 2 pretty quickly, and that's because we intentionally started at the beginning, not necessarily at grade level. I wanted to make sure that my daughter hadn't missed any of the foundational concepts. And I will say, it did help build her confidence and her fluency. So in that sense, it worked. But overall, it ended up feeling like we were just kind of checking off boxes. There was a lot in the program that we either didn't really need or we didn't end up using. It is very structured and thorough, and I totally understand why that is a huge plus for some families. But for us, it was just really kind of too many parts, too much prep, and too much time for what we were actually using and getting out of it. It is a phenomenal program. But as a homeschool mom of one, I'm realizing we really just don't need that level of intensity or kind of hands-on to get results. I honestly don't think we will continue after level 3. And lastly, curriculum bundles. You know those, the big seasonal or topical bundles that show up all over your social media, packed with PDFs from a bunch of different creators. Those. They usually are amazing and include so many great resources. And I have definitely bought my fair share thinking, wow, this is such a good deal. And surely I will use at least a few things from this. But if I'm being honest, they actually end up just sitting in a digital folder somewhere, and I totally forget about them. Unless I have something very specific planned, like for our holiday co-op or a themed unit that I know we are doing, they just don't get used. It's not that the content isn't valuable. There really are some great things often in those bundles, and I genuinely admire the creators who contribute to them. But the reality for me is I'm just not great at remembering to go back and dig through them. And when I do, I usually find myself quite overwhelmed by the number of choices or unsure how to fit kind of all these random pieces into our existing routine. So I've had to draw the line for myself and say, I cannot keep buying these, no matter how great the deal is. If it's not something that I am intentionally planning for, it's just going to sit there and get unused. So there you have it. Some of the homeschool curriculum that I wouldn't buy again. Of course, not because they're bad programs or poorly made, simply because they just didn't necessarily work for us. And that is one of the gifts of homeschooling. You get to figure out what fits for your child, your rhythm, and your season. Sometimes that means trying something and realizing, nope, that was not for us. I'd love to hear in the comments what curriculum you tried that maybe just didn't work in your homeschool. Of course, no judgment, right? We've all been there. And make sure you guys check out the videos from my friends Katie and Wendy down in the description. They are also sharing curriculum that they would not buy again. And it always is really helpful to hear kind of different perspectives. What didn't work for them might totally work for you or could save you from making a misstep. That is it for today's video. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will talk to you soon.